Honorable judges and fellow debaters, I thank you for this fine opportunity to discuss a motion that I believe will fundamentally improve the quality and accessibility of higher education in Indonesia. When we say abolish the final research paper as the main requirement, we mean removing the skripsi or bachelor thesis as the mandatory, singular, culminating requirement for undergraduate degree completion. Most importantly, this doesn't prohibit research, but rather it allows students to demonstrate competency through diversified assessment methods. First, the current system creates some kind of artificial barriers to degree completion. Many capable students struggle with skripsi, not because they lack competency in their field, but due to factors outside from learning, from thesis advisor unavailability, research access limitations, psychological pressure, or financial constraints. We're measuring persistence through bureaucratic hurdles, not from actual misery or mastery. The second one is that the skripsi reflects an outdated model of undergraduate education because in some cases, in many developed nations, bachelor's thesis and programs focus on coursework and applied learning. Because of this, reserving intensive research for graduate studies, our insistence on graduate thesis completion mimics graduate level requirements inappropriately applied to graduates, undergraduates. Thirdly, the system perpetuates inequality. Students from wealthy backgrounds can afford private thesis advisors, extended research time, and other resources. Because of this, students from disadvantaged backgrounds struggle inequally. The skripsi requirement inadvertently privileges socio-economic advantage over actual learning. Fourth, the quality of skripsi work is often questionable. When completion is required, institutions generate massive volumes of mediocre, or many to say, mid research papers. So much of the undergraduate thesis work is actually never published, never cited, and never contributes to actual knowledge. We're basically creating busy works that masquerades as research papers. So we do have a model. We propose replacing mandatory skripsi with a portfolio-based assignment that's including cumulative coursework and GPA, capstone projects, internships or applied learning, and demonstrated competence in research methods, right? These models maintain rigor while allowing flexibility throughout many undergraduates. Institutions could graduate competent professionals faster than many, reducing time to employment because that's important and cost of education for families. Students could enter the workforce, contribute to society and the economy, and pursue advanced research only if genuinely interested in graduate study. That includes my opening case. I look forward to engage with the opposition side. Thank you very much.
I rise today to strongly reject the motion to abolish the final research paper of skripsi. The motion of the Prime Minister proposal is well-intentioned, but it is throwing out the core academic standard of higher education simply to address the problems that are in fact administrative and systematic. We on the opposition argue that the skripsi is not artificial barrier, but is a necessary and an irreplaceable cornerstone of academic rigor. Our first and most crucial argument is that the skripsi should stay because it teaches research, critical thinking, academic discipline that a way no combination of coursework or internship can match. The Prime Minister suggests a portfolio of alternatives, but these are all compromised. The skripsi, however, is a capstone experience that forces students to synthesize 4 years of diverse knowledge, theory, methods, and application. It tests the student ability to manage a long-term project, define their own research question, conduct sustained inquiry, and defend their findings against security. A high GPA proves a student is diligent test taker, but the skripsi proves they are a budding scholar capable of independent, complex analytical work, which is a vital skill for both professional life and further academic study. Secondly, we must firmly reject the Prime Minister's claim that the skripsi itself is the problem. Their examples, advisor unavailability, financial barriers, and low-quality papers are the strong evidence of international failures and low-quality support, not the fault of academic requirement itself. Therefore, we argue that the problem is poor supervision, not the skripsi itself. We need to reform, not abolition. Abolishing the final paper is equivalent to tearing down a house because the plumbing is bad rather than fixing it. We must demand that universities improve the resource allocation, involve a stricter supervisor to student ratio, provide accessible mental health software, and increase the financial for research. The goal should be to raise the equality and accessibility to the thesis process, not to eliminate the most of challenging and rewarding academic experience together. Removing the skripsi itself will fatally undermine the value of bachelor's degree, the job market, and global academia. Without the skripsi, universities lost a clear and standardized academic requirement that provides an objective, internationally understood measure of a graduate's highest level of competence. The final thesis signals to employer and graduate schools that the individual has successfully navigated the complex research project and possess the discipline to contribute to professionally. By replacing this, strongly standardize the requirement to flexible portfolio, which often includes assessment that already present in the curriculum. We risk diluting the academic rigor. This is not the flexibility. It is lowering the bar and will ultimately devalue Indonesian degrees. It is giving our graduates less standing when they are compete internationally. As the closing, the skripsi is necessary crucible for academic maturity. The proposal from the government is a concession to convenience over competence, and it's confused a failure implementation with a flaw in academic standard itself. We must protect the integrity of the bachelor degrees. For this reason, we strongly urge this House to reject the motion.
Okay, as Deputy Prime Minister, I will respond to the opposition and strengthen our case. First, the first opposition said that skripsi builds research skills and critical thinking. But in practice, many students only follow templates, repeat old formats, and write just to fulfill requirements. The process rarely encourages real analytical thinking. So, the opposition's claim doesn't reflect what actually happens in real life. The opposition also said that the issue is supervision, not the skripsi itself. But even if supervision improves, the format of skripsi still doesn't fit many majors. Not all fields require academic writing as their main skill. For engineering, arts, design, and many others, a long academic paper is simply not the most relevant way to measure their competence. A one-size-fits-all format cannot be justified. The opposition also worries that removing skripsi weakens the standards, but we can keep high standards through other final assessments such as internship, capstone project, applied research, and portfolios. These methods show skills better, are harder to fake, and directly connect to the real needs of the workplace. The Prime Minister has shown how skripsi creates artificial barriers, follows an outdated model, and often produces low-impact work. I want to extend this by highlighting the issue of fairness. Students with more resources can pay for editing service or even ghostwriters, while students in smaller regions struggle with poor facilities, limited libraries, and also unstable internet. This means skripsi doesn't measure ability, it measures privilege. We must also consider what students truly need for life after graduation. Practical tasks like internship or real projects help students build teamwork, communication, and problem-solving skills. These experiences are far more valuable to employers and give students clearer pathways into the workplace. For all these reasons, the skripsi requirement no longer matches the reality of modern education. It doesn't measure competence effectively, and it has better alternatives that genuinely help students to grow. This is why we should move away from skripsi as the main graduation requirement. Thank you.
The government said first, the skripsi is irrelevant to the job market, but this is not of view higher education that employ consistently value problem solving, analytical reasoning, and the ability of interpret and communicating the complex ideas. These are precisely the skill developed through writing a thesis, replacing it with less rigorous alternative would produce graduates who complete tests but cannot think critically. Second, the government said the skripsi is too stressful for the students. Difficult is not a reason for abandon academic standard. If stress is the issue, the solution is to improve supervision, expand research support, or diversify methodologies, not to eliminate the most comprehensive academic test in the entire degree program. Third, the government said alternative projects are more practical or creative. Internship, portfolio, or creative work vary widely in quality. Some students may gain useful experience, but some students may spend months doing analytic clerical work or producing the project that cannot be objectively evaluated. The skripsi, however, provides a standardized and academically benchmark that ensure fairness and consistency. So, we as opposition believe, first, the skripsi protect academic integrity. A skripsi provides a transparent and verifiable record of student intellectual work. Without it, university risk granting degrees to the students who have never been tested through independent research. This undermines the legitimacy of the degree itself. Second, we believe that skripsi maintains national and global standards. University really consistent academic requirements so that degree can be fair compared. If every institution use different inconsistency alternative, accreditation become unstable and international recognition of degree declines. A skripsi keeps academic standard alive. Third, we believe the skripsi produce knowledge that benefit to society. Undergraduate skripsi collectively contribute valuable insight from policy recommendation to cultural documentation and small-scale innovation. Removing the skripsi means cutting off a significant source of grassroots research that support communities, industries, and local governments. Ladies and gentlemen, removing the skripsi is not a harm administrative change. It weakens academic, disrupts standardization, and produces graduates without the capacity of deep thinking or independent analysis. A university degree must represent more than participation, it must represent content. Therefore, on the ground of academic integrity, intellectual development, and social contribution, the opposition proudly rejects this motion.
As a member of government, it is my duty to bring this debate down to the pragmatic realities of Indonesian economy and the diverse talents of our students, and further prove why the opposition insistence on the skripsi is nothing short of an academic folly. My first constructive point is this: Indonesia's job market values practical portfolios far more than long academic papers. We must ask, what does a graduate truly need to succeed in the 21st century workforce? It is not the ability to write a 100-page manuscript that will never be read. It is the ability to solve problems, collaborate, and deliver tangible results. Employers are looking for evidence of a player learning, teamwork, communication, and problem-solving skills. These are cultivated through internship, capstone projects, and real-life scenario, which are the very things we purpose to replace the skripsi with. A final paper provides zero evidence of student ability to manage a team, code a functional application, design a sustainable product, or execute a marketing campaign. A portfolio, on the other hand, filled with completed projects, recommended internship, and applied research over a direct, high-value, and relevant assessment of competence. This is directly connected to the real needs of the workplace. Abolishing the skripsi allows institutions to graduate competent professionals faster, reducing the time to employment and immediately boosting the students' contribution to the economy and society. We are not weakening standards, we are aligning them with the needs of the nation. My second point addresses the inherent bias of the current system. Abolishing the skripsi opens up space for students with diverse talent and interdisciplinary skill. The current requirement forces every student, regardless of their major, into restrictive, long academic paper format. This is illogical. A long academic paper is simply not the most relevant way to measure the competence of a designer whose main output is visual or engineer whose main output is functional prototype. Furthermore, the current system perpetuates inequality. First, it It privileges socioeconomic advantage over actual learning. Students from wealthy background can offer private advisor and editing services. And secondly, students from smaller regions struggle with limited resources, poor facility, and unstable internet. The skripsi requirement essentially declares that if your talent lies outside of academic writing, or if your background lacks privilege, you are less worthy of degree. By embracing a portfolio-based assessment, we create an inclusive environment where a student's success can be demonstrated through a successful startup, a high-level design project, a technical invention, or a comprehensive case study. We stop measuring privilege and start celebrating genuine, diverse ability. So my conclusion is we have established that the skripsi is a major roadblock to degree completion and outdated model, a vehicle for inequality. I have further demonstrated that we must move away from the obsession with the manuscript and towards assessment that are relevant to the job market and equitable for all talents. So we must abolish the final research paper as the main requirement, and we urge you to stand with the government. Thank you.
So, to respond to the arguments from the government bench, the second half of the government claims that portfolios and internships are more aligned with the job market. But this view is too narrow. Education is not only about preparing students for immediate employment, it is also about building analytical capability, intellectual maturity, and a strong national research culture. If we remove the skripsi entirely, we risk reducing universities into mere vocational training centers, stripping away the academic foundation that differentiates higher education from short course or skill-based certification. A portfolio or internship cannot replace this because they are inherently inconsistent. Different supervisors, different industries, different standards. In contrast, the skripsi offers a unified, academically credible benchmark across university. Once we abolish it, we lose a clear, standardized measure of what it means to earn a bachelor degree in Indonesia. The government argues that the skripsi creates inequality, but the alternatives they propose actually worsen the inequality. Good internships rely on connections. Prestigious projects often require funding. And students from smaller regions who may not even have access to industries or organizations will be left behind completely. In fact, a research paper is one of the most accessible forms of assessments because it can be conducted with minimal resource, using libraries, online data, or basic qualitative methods. If fairness is truly the concern, the solution is to improve guidance and resources, not to abolish the only requirement that every student, regardless of background, can complete on equal academic terms. Most importantly, abolishing the skripsi would deeply weaken Indonesia's already fragile research culture. Right now, the skripsi is the first and often the only time students can learn how to formulate research questions, analyze data, write academically, and defend the logic behind their works. It is our largest generator of new researchers, new studies, and new academic literature. Without it, we are creating a generation of graduates who have never written a formal paper, never conducted structured analysis, and never practiced intellectual discipline. This will damage our academic reputation both domestically and internationally. When foreign institutions evaluate our students, the skripsi is one universal proof that an Indonesian graduate has undergone structured research training. Removing it will make our degrees inconsistent and significantly less credible in the global academic landscape. In conclusion, the government's proposal prioritizes convenience over competence and short-term benefits over long-term national development. Instead of tearing down the research requirement, we should reform the system to ensure better supervision, better access, and fairer support. The skripsi is not the problem, poor implementation is. Removing it would weaken academic standards, undermine university credibility, and cripple Indonesian research development. For this reason, I firmly stand with the opposition. Thank you.
Honorable Chair and members of the House, as the government whip, I stand to summarize why the proposition clearly wins this debate. Our Prime Minister showed that the skripsi has become an outdated and rigid requirement that no longer reflects how students learn today, and instead creates unnecessary obstacles that delay graduation, increase stress, and widen inequality between those with access to resources and those without. He demonstrated that the thesis doesn't measure real capability, since most students complete only to satisfy administration, not to produce meaningful academic contribution. Our Deputy Prime Minister strengthened this by showing that the opposition's claim about critical thinking doesn't hold in practice because many students simply follow templates and repeat recycled topics, making the scripts a ritual, not a reflection of intellectual growth. She also highlighted that the format doesn't fit many disciplines, especially those that access competence through practical work, creation or real-world application, and that alternatives such as portfolios, capstones, and internship remain rigorous while being more relevant, fair, and accessible. Our member of government added a crucial extension by grounding the debate in Indonesia's current workforce needs, explaining that the employers value demonstrated skill, collaboration, creativity, and problem solving more than a lengthy academic paper that few ever read. She showed that removing the skripsi allows students to enter the workforce sooner, reduces financial burden, and recognizes diverse strengths instead of forcing one narrow pathway. Throughout this debate, the opposition defended the tradition, but failed to justify why one single format should continue to determine graduation for every student across every field, despite evidence of stress, delay, relevance, and inequality. For these reasons, the proposition clearly proved that abolishing the skripsi leads to a fairer, more modern, and more meaningful education system. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, ladies and gentlemen, as the opposition whip, my role is to crystallize this debate and show why abolishing the skripsi would seriously harm Indonesia's academic integrity. So first, on the purpose of a university degree, the government claimed that university must adapt to the job market. But the opposition has shown that the higher education is not just about job preparation, correct? It is about building analytical reasoning, independent thought, and academic discipline. And the skripsi remains the strongest academic measure for this. It is the only assessment that requires students to integrate theory, methods, and evidence into one coherent project. Alternatives like portfolios or internship lacks consistency, comparability, and academic rigor. So, second, the government argued that the skripsi is stressful or inaccessible, but there are problems of implementation, not the thesis itself. The opposition has been firm that the skripsi does not need abolition; it needs improvement. It needs better supervision, it needs clear guidance, more research support, and proper mental health resources directly addresses these issues. So removing the thesis entirely is not reform, it is simply lowering standards. And third, on fairness, the government suggests that the skripsi disadvantage students, yet their alternative actually worsen inequality. Internship depends on connections, and creative project requires money, and opportunities vary widely across regions. So a research paper is, however, one of the most accessible and equalizing assessment available. Any students can use public data, they can conduct basic qualitative research, and making skripsi a more standardized, fair of benchmark. So finally, abolition harms academic standards and damages Indonesia's research development. The skripsi is the country's foundational training ground for research skill. The first time students learn to ask questions, analyze data, and write academically. Removing it weakens university credibility, disrupts national academic consistency, and erodes Indonesian long-term research pipeline. So, in weighing this debate, the government offers inconsistency, weaker standards, and no real fixes to the supervision problem. So, the opposition offers a strong and fair academic benchmark, practical improvements, and long-term protections of Indonesia's intellectual development. So, in closing, the skripsi is still the strongest academic measures we have, and it requires improvement and not eliminations. So abolishing it would weaken standards, deepen inequality, and harm our national research future. So for these reasons, the opposition firmly rejects the motion. Thank you.